What's a sign someone is quietly planning to quit their job? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. I recall co-workers would suddenly have dentist-doctor appointments. Like every week, they were at interviews. Answer. At my first salary job, the owner of the company hired an outbound sales associate. About 4 months into her role, she called in and told the owner she had an emergency dentist appointment because she chipped her tooth on a popcorn kernel the night before. When she came into work later that day, she showed us the chipped tooth. She had 2 more dentist appointments that month, and after the final appointment, she submitted her 2 weeks' notice. Turns out, her dentist appointments were job interviews with another company that extended her an offer. Her chipped tooth was actually something that happened to her years before. She simply removed the cap covering after the first appointment to lend credence to the situation. Story 2. Usually if a high performer or likable manager quits, that sets off a chain reaction of quitters. Seen it a few times. Answer. My company fired 3 people at the beginning of the year, 1 very high performer and 2 devs whom we actually really needed a month later. We're all searching for new jobs or making plans to leave while keeping the higher-ups happy. They just fired another guy that they literally hired 3 weeks ago and haven't told everyone yet. They set this guy up to fail due to bad management. 1 person already found a new job and left about 2 weeks ago. I have 3 interviews lined up this week and next. I'm hoping one of them pans out. My direct manager stopped fighting and explaining themselves to the higher-ups. They just agree and do the shoot the higher-ups ask for them in. They plan on growing their skills while they are here and move into a different role entirely. Others have been putting out feelers. Story 3. My previous boss told me some things when me and him were driving home from a work outing, such as how he felt he got passed over for a promotion, how resentful he was about some things, etc., etc. At first I was like, why is he telling me these things? A month or so later, he announces he had accepted an offer for another job. Story 4. When I decided to quit my job, my behavior changed instantly. I just didn't care anymore. I decided that I did not want to hear my colleagues complain anymore. I didn't want to stress myself anymore. I was thus very chill and I agreed with everyone. I was not fighting anymore. It's a nice feeling, NGL. You then notice that nobody pays attention, and this confirms that it's time for you to leave. No regret at all. Answer. I feel ya. I'm preparing to leave my job, though probably not for another few months or so while I prepare my general knowledge base for the career change. But now I find myself no longer wanting to tolerate the annoying or overeager coworker or the incompetent manager. And I find myself pitying just how taken advantage of some of my coworkers are in their passion for this profession. I literally just want to go through the day with as little fanfare as possible, get paid, and go home. Story 5. They appear happier than ever. They take lots of phone calls outside when they haven't done this before, either health scare or new job. Story 6. Their stress levels drop almost overnight. Fair warning, this can also indicate an intention to commit tragic end. Both come with a sudden, almost euphoric relief that a decision has been made and the struggle is almost over. Answer. I was probably right before the breaking point of stress levels when I went into work and told them I couldn't do it anymore. My hands were shaking so bad from nerves on the drive to work that I felt like I could barely drive straight. Quitting helped. But I didn't have another job lined up, and I had told my wife I would have one before I quit. We ended up going to marriage counseling. Luckily, I landed a job I really liked, starting at the pay I had from the job I quit. The stress levels are almost non-existent now. It's been a huge change in my mental state to not stress about work as much as I used to. Story 7. Using up most if not all sick time and/or vacation time. Stops inquiring about tasks or projects. Work rate slows down to bare minimum, turns down overtime they normally would take. More relaxed or honest with coworkers or management. Answer, I would add for the first one as a manager. Usually it's taking single sick days or single vacation days, especially in the middle of the week. Most people who are sick tend to not miraculously recover in one day. Similarly, it's unusual to take vacation days that aren't the long weekend kind, and most companies book interviews on days other than Monday, Friday. But yeah, I think the other red flag I've noticed is when someone on a growth path suddenly stops taking extracurricular interests. It may not mean they're looking or interviewing, but it definitely is a sign something is up. They're either unhappy with work, going through some sort of mental health burnout, etc. Unfortunately, I found as a manager, no matter how I try to breach that subject, employees tend to just give you the "no, everything is fine" vague answer. Story 8. In a retail store setting, they purchase top-end merchandise using an employee discount. This is how I get a 2-month notice that they are planning to leave. Answer. I've had my current job for a little over a year now, And the first thing I was planning on doing as soon as I got an offer for a more stable job was to buy the most expensive thing we sold with my discount. We have a floor sample to demo to customers and loved using it ourselves. It's been so long that not only did I lose interest in the thing, as I have learned about better alternatives, we stopped selling it outright. Story 9. They stop caring about deadlines or showing up early. They check out in meetings and avoid extra work. Their mood changes, but they don't say why. Answer. I did this at my last job. I challenged my new manager on a policy she made up, took it all the way to HR, who said, no, that's a made-up policy, you don't have to do that. The director called me, saying she made the policy, and it absolutely needed to be followed regardless of that, HR said. So I started coming in at 8 a.m. I'd be at work earlier, but I'd be in my car or walling outside the building. I wouldn't sit down or start my laptop till 8 a.m. And even if I was in a phone call, I'd tell the person, I'll call them back the next time I needed to leave, and clock out at 5 p.m. A month later, I handed in my resignation. I didn't even tell them I got a new job. I just quit, and when they asked why, I cited that situation and said I don't work for bullies. Story 10. I knew my colleague was quitting a whole month before she told anyone because I noticed, 1, she used to look stressed out when it's the end of the day, almost like she's thinking, WTF, how is it 6 p.m. already? I still have so much to do. But then suddenly she would start leaving at 6 p.m. sharp in a really relaxed and nonchalant manner, almost as if she's thinking, welp, it's time to go home. All this shoot won't be my problem anymore soon enough. 2. But the biggest giveaway is when we'd have a big team meeting. You know when your boss is spouting all these big grand ideas he has in his head, and the team shoot each other a look like, oh, fudge, looks like we'll have more work on our plate. I noticed she didn't participate in those glances anymore. She'd just zone out because she knew she wouldn't be involved anymore. Answer 1. She used to look stressed out when it's the end of the day, almost like she's thinking, woof, how is it 6 p.m. already? I still have so much to do. But then suddenly she would start leaving at 6 p.m. sharp in a really relaxed and nonchalant manner, almost as if she's thinking, well, it's time to go home. All this shoot won't be my problem anymore soon enough. Hell, I always do that, even if I don't plan to quit. I get paid hourly, and my shift ends at 5 p.m. I don't care how much work I have left to do. I am logging off at 5 p.m. sharp without exception. Work never bleeds into my free time. It's the only reason I don't quit TBH. Story 11. The most consistent tell is the one management already knows. They ask for a raise that is denied or less than requested. Then they will reconfirm benefits to compare to their new offer. They will begin filing expenses ahead of normal routines. And last, they spend more time at the printer or copier. Story 12. A big clue is when someone who was always part of the team suddenly pulls back. Maybe they skip the group chats, don't join for lunch, and just seem less interested in everything at work. They might start clocking out right on time, calling in sick more often, or turning down new projects. You can kind of sense their attention drifting, like they're getting ready for something new, but haven't said it out loud yet. Story 13. I worked as a claims agent for a home warranty company during my college years. The last 2 weeks there, I approved claims left and right automatically instead of looking into them like we were supposed to. I thought to myself, screw it, might as well give myself less hassle and make random people's lives a bit easier. Story 14. They have that resigning glow, similar to women's pregnancy glow. In resignation case, the guys glow too. Story 15. They get the I don't give a fudge attitude in all their interactions. They arrive bang on 9 and are gov by 5. Some of them will start to close out those things that have been piling on their desk out of courtesy to their team. Story 16. Buying things that require loans since you may not have job. Going to doctor and dentist while still insured. Removing personal items from work inconspicuously. Ignoring stupid requests and not taking crap from people like you normally would. I quit my job after 20 years recently. Story 17. I'm quietly planning on quitting my job. There are no signs I'll quit when I quit. I probably won't even give any notice. I just won't ever come to work again. Hopefully sometime in the next month. Story 18. First sign is they start randomly calling in sick more often, usually for a single day, or start taking random single holiday days for no obvious reason. Normally means they're actually attending interviews. Story 19. I was certain I was getting laid off in 2019 pre-COVID and started quietly looking for a new job. Every day I started bringing home some personal items from my desk. Nothing much, just a few things I would be sad to no longer have. I had a bunch of follow-up doctor appointments that I needed to schedule that were actually interviews. I stopped voluntarily participating in meetings. If I wasn't called on, I kept my mouth shut. I didn't make suggestions or offer encouragement, just checked right out. I stopped engaging with coworkers for anything non-work related. I stopped all overtime. Suddenly was super busy after work. I found that my mood and mental health immediately improved because what's the worst they could do? Fire me? Ha! Then the COO called me and was all, I would like to move you to another department, which I agreed to. Then COVID hit and everything shut down and I kind of stopped looking for a new job. I find I still have the what's the worst they can do? Fire me? Mentality, which has made my life a ton better. A lot of things that used to stress me out no longer do. I've refound passions I long forgot I had. Work is just a means to provide me with funds to live. Story 20. When they show up to work wearing interview clothes they don't normally wear any other day. I've done that a few times. One of the most memorable, good morning. That's a nice outfit. Do we need to be worried? I knew what the person meant and I answered this way. Good morning to you. Thank you and yeah, you probably do. Then the person literally ran into the CEO's office. I was out the door in less than a month to a better and better paying job. Answer, when I quit one of my first jobs at a small business, one of the owners asked what they could do to keep me change my mind. I told him, if I thought you really wanted to keep me, you'd have done it by now. Something I heard third hand from someone who left a job was essentially, you didn't have it in the budget for 6 months, but now that I'm 1 foot out the door, you have all these resources? I'll pass because all you're doing is resetting my ceiling. The new place is setting my floor. That stuck with me at a job I quit 4 years ago. I was telling my director why I was leaving. I had made my argument for a raise, had everything short of a PowerPoint. When he asked if there was anything they could do, I used a combination of the two. I did the math and I was asking for $3,200 a year from a billion-dollar multinational company. I said to put that in perspective. When they have ELT fly to a site or they do these top performers off-site meetings, they spend magnitudes more than my annual salary, and I'm asking for a fraction of it. I'll pass. I wasn't bitter or pissed off. I knew how the game was played. But every company that preaches loyalty and doesn't practice it, nah, fam, I'm good. Story 21. Some signs can be taking a bunch of personal days, particularly around weekends, to extend them, and openly admitting to not doing much. Had someone I worked with doing this, was burning vacation and sick time before putting in 2 weeks. Just took a ton of trips and relaxed. Story 22. I've rarely seen a quiet quit. I have seen a resentment build over a week, day, or entire career that escalates into a walkout one day. Story 23. I just went up for promotion with some competition from a couple coworkers, except I've been doing everything basically that the promotion asked for the last 6 months. And if I don't get it, I won't be waiting for another position to open up. I'll be finding a new place of employment without telling a single person. I haven't even told anyone IRL I applied for it or had the interview, which I think went fantastic. Okay, ran over. Story 24. People who used to take the initiative to take on extra tasks and work overtime suddenly became punctual for work and leave on time, and use no time and no idea as excuses for work beyond their responsibilities. They even did their core work perfunctorily and no longer pursued quality and efficiency. Story 25. They start buying barrels of ammonium nitrate and have booked a random day off midweek for a passion project they're working on. Story 26. If someone is trying to quit their job quietly, it means that they don't have faith in their employer to want the best for them. That shoot is on you, dog. Story 27. As someone who literally did exactly this a week ago, I didn't take phone calls or anything like some had suggested. Quite literally, just stopped caring about the job. Didn't care if I got fired for not doing something or doing it wrong because I had a guaranteed plan B. That job was the most stressful job I ever held until I landed my new job. Story 28. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary of quietly quitting my job. It was the very best feeling in the world, leaving behind a toxic work environment ruled over by inept and narcissistic senior managers. Now I'm happier and more free than I've felt in a long time. Before leaving, I started taking home things from my office. I also started passing up opportunities to excel, giving others a chance to work harder for no additional recognition or compensation. I gave only a few days' notice as the managers had a very long track record of screwing with every single person, even those retiring, who gave plenty of notice of leaving. Story 29. When things get frustrating during the job and they just laugh into the void briefly and abruptly before continuing on with the madness. Story 30. I cleared my files on my computer 3 months before. They kept a 3-month backup and slowly took my belonging out. Fan one day, radio another until I had the basics there, and then walked with the contents of my drawers. No one knew it was coming. I even waited until a major project was due for a meeting and did nothing. Boss and company were crooks and they lost the contract. Story 31. I didn't give a shoot after I was passed for what I thought was a nailed-on promotion. I very quietly applied for another job, and once I got it, the doors to all my pent-up years of frustration were opened, and I aired a few home truths. No personal attacks, just work-related. It was liberating, freeing, and I knew I could pretty much say what I wanted without fear, because who is going to snitch on somebody leaving very soon? Story 32. They no longer get upset about things they cannot change. They only work their contracted hours. They get quieter. Their workspace seems tidier. Story 33. Them not giving as many fudge about their work as they once did, using all their vacation or PTO unexpectedly. Story 34. When they stop complaining. If someone is no longer bringing up issues and trying to fix them, they don't care anymore because they are on their way out. Same goes for relationships. Story 35. I'm currently in the middle of looking for a new job and seeing if I'm doing any of these. LOL. Def a lot less caring. Lots of sure. Because in my head, I won't be dealing with the fallout later. Story 36. Stop participating. Stop chatting. Clearing the desk off for no obvious reason. Any conversation they have, they don't engage. Add nothing besides yeahs and sures. Story 37. I just did enough at work to get by and not raise any suspicions. With the time I saved, I updated my resume and job searched. Story 38. So many of the signs listed, being happy and relaxed, showing fewer signs of stress, not feeling obligated to do extra unpaid work, using their paid time off, taking care of themselves with doctor's visits, using their employee discount. It's too bad those can't be the signs of an average employee who is happy with their job. Story 39. I've been running kitchens for a long time. I remember a while back when I was just a cook that we had one guy who was really, really good. Great work ethic, never called out. Definitely none of the best hourly employees I've ever worked with. He had a knife roll like all of us, but he never took it home. He always cleaned his knives, put them in his roll, and put it in the chef's office. One night, he was in a shoot mood because he was denied a raise. And we're talking like less than $1 per hour after not getting one for several years. He'd found out a new cook that was hired was making more than he was, and just wanted to be making the same. Anyway, it was the first time I saw him take his knives home with him, and also the last. So the sign for me is if someone is pissed and takes all of their personal belongings with them, they're probably going to quit. Story 40. I started taking home personal items one by one, a cup here, a picture there. When it was time to exit, there was no box to pack. Story 41. If you work in a company that does annual bonuses, you can usually count on a wave of quits in the week or two after bonuses come out. At my company, we call it turnover season. There's often a similar wave of quits, though delayed, after mid-year reviews, when it becomes clear what kind of bonus you might be able to expect at end of year. A month or two after mid-years, there's often a bunch of people leaving after they figure out it's not worth waiting the year out. Story 42. Being underpaid, toxic workplace, undervalued, overworked, new workload without new pay. Anyone in those conditions would likely be silently quitting. Story 43. Left a sizable company due to a toxic manager and lack of competitive pay. I got a new manager and they were the straw that broke my back. Ha ha ha. I absolutely loathed being around them. I was so wound up and generally annoyed around her. Couldn't stand her micromanagement and finally got a great opportunity. I waited patiently for months for said opportunity to finally reach out. I spent months just generally upset. It was seeping into my personal life and relationship. I was thinking about work on the weekends. I was about to crack. As soon as the new company gave me an offer, my eyes watered. All that pent-up anger and aggression just vanished. I was relieved. I went back to the office the next day like I won the Powerball. I think she even knew BC. She joked with me that I was leaving her, but I knew that I actually was. By Friday, I told her BC, I thought, she can do whatever she wants to me, but my biggest commitment is to my clients. I wanted them to be in a good place and offered to work for an additional 3.5 weeks. They could have let me go right then and there, but they let me finish out strong. I worked my hardest those last few weeks there. I received lots of kudos from my clients, university fellows, scientists, engineers, and that made every day that much better. In a better place and growing more now, but I'm always thankful for my previous opportunity. Story 44. Phrases like, we'll see how things go, or I'm not sure I'll be here in a few months are quite revealing. Story 45. For me, I became instantly happy and no longer stressed. I didn't give any fudge about the people or work that needed to be done. Story 46. I've had two different supervisors whose attitudes seem to abruptly change from stressed, following the company line, talking about goals and where we can go next, to, hey, don't worry about it, and sharing their own cynical opinions about higher-up decisions. Both soon announced they were moving on. Story 47. After years of requesting they hire someone to learn the critical systems I support with no result, I quietly submitted my retirement notification, and suddenly I got their attention. My last day was July 1st, and I am off on my next adventure. Story 48. I've seen changes in personality. The things they were outspoken about seem no bother anymore. They do their job and go home. They're less involved but still working. Then they're gone. Story 49. In America, they suddenly seem happy, but their next job will be just as horrible. But that month not hating your life is awesome. Story 50. I noticed that people change how they use LinkedIn before changing jobs. They stop sharing general news about the company. So great to see Big Corp achieve Best Employer of the Year, and instead post about personal accomplishments. So proud to work on this new product. This is to build a personal resume or portfolio for anyone who checks out their LinkedIn profile. If they don't set their privacy settings correctly, you can see if they are befriending new people that they interviewed with, or if they like a post by another company. These are giveaways if you are watching closely. The biggest clue is simply that someone puts a lot of effort into updating their LinkedIn profile. It's usually the first thing people do when they are looking for something new. Story 51. When I was planning to quit, I stopped doing anything that wasn't mandatory. I also took more sick days than I had my entire time at the company with the span of a couple months. Story 52. Today is my last day at my current job. I've been leaving early a lot and flat out telling managers no. My most used phrase has been, whatever. They can give me a write-up. What do I care? Story 53. They avoid social work events. They don't take breaks and continue working so that they can leave earlier. They are more sick often, etc. Story 54. The boss doesn't support them. They don't get paid enough. Coworkers are abusive. Don't look at the person, look at the environment. A lot of people don't give you a tell. Just get fed up with it and leave. Story 55. I took 6 weeks of paid leave. Lol, it was glorious to watch my manager rage when I put in my 2 weeks 15 minutes into returning. She was such a male body part. Story 56. If you catch your henchman arguing with his shoulder angels, he may end up quitting his job as your evil lackey by the third act. Story 57. They came to you asking for a raise and you said no, and they smiled as they walked out of your office. Story 58. I'm approaching 50. I recently quit a job I'd been at for 2 years. It was supposed to be my life job, with a good pension, the most money I've ever earned, etc., at a recognized name with a good reputation. Sadly, it turns out it was a completely batshit company with terrible management, and the job is an awful grind with almost no prospect of progression and a hideous turnover rate. After my initial bedding in and making my mark, when you're somehow immune to everything, even though it is clearly wrong, I changed. I first went through a phase of calling out all the batshit and unfairness, complaining, and possibly moved to the fringes of what some would call not a team player. I was very visible. The next phase was trying my hardest to get off the crippling shift pattern and away from the worst jobs by networking with other departments to some success. As a result, I became less visible. Finally, when it was clear that things would never improve to a level I could tolerate, I just did the bare minimum, worked to rule, got ill a lot more, and contributed far less to meetings, etc. It got to the point where one of the managers remarked they hadn't seen me in months, despite me working a few desks away in the office. And I chose my moment to say goodbye in the most respectable manner possible. Never burn your bridges. I have a 3-month notice period and have told no one. I will just leave. That was my journey. Story 59. What's a sign someone is quietly planning to quit their job? They stop complaining about things happening at work. Story 60. They stop pushing back in meetings. No more suggestions, no more objections, just nodding and doing the bare minimum. It's like they've already left, just not officially. Story 61. For me, it was, you've done a great job this year. Unfortunately, there is no money for a raise, so I started doing no raises effort and grew my side business instead. Was gone in 2 months. Story 62. I don't plan on quitting anytime soon, but I've told my really close with group that when I do, they'll know because I have 800 hours of ESL, extended sick leave, separate from PTO, that I accumulated, but won't get paid out if I quit. I'll make sure I get every bit I can out of that before I go anywhere. Story 63. When they start doing the bare minimum, could also be that they realize their worth oversleep, leave early, don't complain anymore, don't try to change things anymore. Just do what they're told to, and that's it. Story 64. A somewhat more positive attitude or disposition. A former co-worker of mine who spent nearly every minute complaining to anyone within earshot all of a sudden wanted to know how our days were going and talk about favorite TV shows and such. Turns out she landed another job or a better position and higher pay. Story 65. Because I just did this. Going with the flow, being nice and agreeable, but not going out of my way, going above. Just doing the bare minimum. Like everyone else, I interviewed Monday afternoon and later that day, 4:30 p.m., got a job off from where I interviewed. Then I emailed my boss with a resignation letter. Story 66. A haircut. Came in one day after chopping off my mullet and coworker said, "Somebody's got an interview." Yep. Story 67. Using a lot more PTO than normal, depending on the environment, looping in teammates and cross-training them in areas they didn't need to know before. Ignoring emails, work intakes, declining meetings for projects with long timelines. Story 68. Start sneaking out personal items. I knew one time I wanted to go, so it took everything home. It got noticed that my office was basically empty. Story 69. Just my experience, but not indicative of everyone. I recently accepted a job, leaving a company I had been with for 17 years. I think back at a few things I did. I became a little more vocal about leadership decisions that made me uncomfortable. I dug in to get everything to a good spot so that once I left, the people that were left wouldn't be saddled with cleaning up my chute. I spoke in hypotheticals. If I left, this would be why, not because of things I really enjoyed and people I appreciated. If anything, I was very emotionally invested with my old employer. I had an amazing team, and I really believed in what I was doing. But the 60 to 70-hour weeks and emotional stress that came with it, along with the alienation it was causing with my personal life, right as I was expecting my first child, wasn't enough to justify it. So I think my guilt of leaving came across to the people I interacted with on a daily basis. Story 70. As someone who actually did it this way, I stopped caring about everything work-related, never paid attention in meetings, and stopped going above for my manager. I honestly did the bare minimum because I asked for a raise in internal transfer and was told no, am not qualified for the role I was doing. Story 71. Former preschool teacher here. If someone starts leaving with more bags than they came in with, or random things start disappearing, they're taking things home and getting ready to quit. I took all my personal things out of the classroom gradually for a month before turning in my notice. Turned in my notice, immediately went into the classroom and started packing everything else up in full sight of my co-teacher. By my last day, I only had to leave with what I brought in that day. Story 72. As an employer, if I think someone is about to quit, I watch for their personal belongings at their desk to start disappearing, coming to work overdressed and leaving early for a doctor's appointment. Story 73. Passionate people who stop complaining have become emotionally detached and are looking for the door. Story 74. They stop trying to fix problems or responding to task issues. If they are in a position responsible for team members, they'll let the team do whatever they want. I didn't quietly plan to quit. It was in the spur of the moment. But in the weeks leading up to it, people were asking if I was okay because I was no longer trying to help or giving them the answers they were used to getting from me. Even the lazy coasters were worried I was no longer trying to motivate them and started improving their minimum stats on their own. And every now and then would update me with, "See, I've nearly hit my target this time. El Mao." Story 75. The question is, how is the workplace environment and how they're treated? Why stay at a place where they're bullied and HR won't do anything or doing more than their job description but being paid equal or lower as if they're doing the bare minimum? Are they guilted into going to work? I'm not talking sociality. I mean the actual manager taking the call actively guilting the person. Are the benefits the same or better compared to other companies that does the same work? Sure, pay plays a role, but why stay at a job where you spend half your life where you're treated like another number and generally like shoot? Story 76. Stress drops fast, sometimes signaling they're thinking of giving up. It's a fleeting rush of relief, but it's a red flag. Story 77. OP, why don't you schedule regular one-on-ones and ask them how they're doing and how you can help instead of making more demands? Story 78. PFML for stress and anxiety. A competent person who suddenly doesn't give a fudge, going quiet and just yesing everyone and half-assing everything to passing. I'm currently dealing with severe burnout, being in, what I would argue, one of the most thankless fields on the planet, human services. Parents who are assholes, clients who are assholes, know everything, nurses all with savior complexes, entry-level staff, the majority of whom are trash and just a body-to-meat ratios, upper management who doesn't give a shoot and works you into the ground, getting blamed for absolutely everything. Yikes, that turned into a rant that I didn't expect. Story 79. They've checked out completely and no longer partake in company activities, engaging in the same way with their coworkers, taking more time off and more calls, interviews. Story 80. When they suddenly aren't afraid to tell their manager, no, sorry, I cannot help you with this. That's because they have accepted another job already, have signed the contract, and are handing in their resignation by the end of the month. Story 81. I was working on a project with another technical writer. We had a deadline in a few days. I asked him what he had completed. Nothing. He hadn't worked on the project for a month and had given his 2-week notice that day, but didn't plan to do any work for the next 2 weeks because he already had another job. They sent him home that afternoon. I never saw him again. Story 82. They start getting a little moderate in their opinions after being really outspoken about everything. They don't have a horse in the race anymore. Story 83. I used to joke that the first sign of someone leaving their job was not showing up, being late, calling out, missing meetings, missing apps, many family emergencies, constant car trouble, health issues, and on and on. Story 84. LOL, a coworker I was friendly with started doing jigsaw puzzles at work, and I was too dumb to realize it meant she was leaving. Story 85. If they have a lot of stuff in their office, they start taking home their things one by one. They agree to do some work they usually don't want to do without complaining. They plan a vacation at a very awkward period, knowing they won't be coming back. Story 86. They suddenly stop caring about long-term projects or just start using all their PTO without explanation. Major clue. Story 87. Their desk accessories start to disappear. Like they start taking personal stuff home because they don't know if they will be fired when they give their 2 weeks notice. Story 88. A fresh haircut. Midday meetings. Being clean-shaven when they usually had a beard. Basically, if they look hireable when they were relaxed before, that's a pretty big red flag. Source. When I was prepping to quit, I did all these things. Story 89. If their personal life keeps becoming more and more overwhelming to the point where they quit their job because their home life overrides their work life. Story 90. Quit my job about 4 months ago and realizing I did basically every single one of the top voted things. Lots of appointments, stopped caring in meetings, was a high performer who stopped performing, quietly packed up my cubicle, etc., etc., etc. Story 91. They perform less, they do things just to get by, and sometimes they don't do them at all, and even their behavior is different. Story 92. One of my coworkers recently said they might see us after their holiday. They did not return from their holiday. Story 93. Dressing up better every day, taking a long lunch, leaving an hour early or coming in an hour late to go to an interview, quietly, slowly taking home all personal things. Story 94. I started openly talking about UFOs and out-of-body experiences at my job, in health insurance. I love my team, but the system is beyond broken, and I have spent the last 15 years trying to make a difference. I don't even have anything lined up. I just want out. Story 95. As someone who logged leave of absences, someone using all of their sick time is definitely one sign someone is about to quit. Story 96. Asking for office documents that they lied on, getting the documents they used to commit insurance fraud. Dumbass secretary just gave me everything I asked for without even asking why I wanted them. Then I sued the balls off of them. Company's currently going bankrupt. They should have paid me on their terms. Now they're going to pay me on my terms. Story 97. In my country, it's pretty easy. If someone requests a sick leave report, a report that shows how many days they can call in sick and still get paid, and calls in sick the following week, they're quitting. They're just using up their paid sick leave first. Story 98. A coworker figured out I was on my way out the door after seeing a spreadsheet I had been working on. I was making sure the team had all the data they needed to carry on without me. She was the only one with any suspicions. Everyone else just thought I was organized. Story. Turn 99. Lots of DR's appointments, both for interviews and getting medical shoot done prior to changing insurance and slowly taking personal items home. At least that's what I always did. Story 100. I'm in the interview process ARN for a new job after my boss completely gaslit me about workplace bullying and am not doing anything other than my job requirements. If it's not an immediate need, then fudge it. I'm not talking to anyone and everyone's getting the driest responses. Also because I'm leaving another coworker's quitting too, and we've both stopped fighting, standing up for ourselves. They fudge around and are about to see how shoot it is without half their staff. Story 101. You can scale up with new AI technology, then you are in risk mode in the job. Anytime you can be fired. No job means no money, no respect, and etc. Story 102. I used to work with a guy who would go fishing on his lunch break. Then he would bring the fish in and scale gut it on his desk. It was hilarious. Plans sort of backfired though, as I remember they put as many as 4 employees under him. Yup, tried to quit and ended up management. Good times. Story 103. I work in a preschool and a big sign is when they spend extra time with their favorite kids, even if they are in another class. Story 104. They just down tools. They probably arrive right on time and leave right on time. They don't rise to people or get stressed over tasks anymore. Story 105. They look scruffier and sleepier the closer they are to quitting. They don't give a shoot in their final days. Story 106. Once they starts to whinge, that's the first few signs that I noticed. But again, it all depends on the person. Some very vocal about it, some goes quiet and suddenly drop the bomb. I had a coworker who's threatening to quit almost every day for 3 years. She outlasted people that seemingly enjoyed the job. And I had a coworker who's seemingly enjoying the job, but suddenly handed in their resignation. Story 107. They start pulling back fewer questions in meetings, skipping optional calls, stopping the extra mile stuff. You might notice them using more PTO, updating LinkedIn quietly, or just acting a little emotionally detached. It's not dramatic, it's subtle. Like they're mentally halfway out the door already. Story 108. Person starts over communicating the details of the job and processes they do to people likely to get the role or job responsibilities. Story 109. When they ask you to connect on LinkedIn, start showing the intern how to do their job, and suddenly have a dentist appointment every other afternoon. Story 110. My coworker quit not so long ago and I had no idea. He was happy and would give me hugs, talk about his life and sing with me all the time. He left because of stress. Story 111. Randomly taking half days, showing up to work wearing nicer than usual clothes, taking phone calls privately if normally they don't walk away. Mostly you're looking for a change in behavior. Story 112. From my own experience, when I was at my previous job and was getting ready to start my new job, I tried to transition to the new job without telling anyone. I started taking time off at random times of the workday under the guise of appointments to head to things like the pre-assessment exam, interviews, and orientation. Even though I didn't tell any of my coworkers I was actually transitioning to a new job, I found out my coworkers were getting suspicious. I was looking at a new job since I started taking off randomly for appointments when I never previously took this much time off. They also noticed I was clearly healthy and didn't show or talk about any medical issues despite going to appointments. They eventually did ask if I was looking for a new job, but I just played dumb and denied it. Eventually, when the time came and I was accepted and had a start date for my new job, I then came clean and admitted it. I told them my coworkers they were right the whole time. They were shocked but happy to see me get a new job and didn't hold anything back at me for not telling them this whole time. I actually later had several of my older coworkers ask if they can join me at my new job once I left. Story 113. Using all their vacation time well before the end of the year. That was how my boss knew I was leaving last time I quit. Still left on good terms, but I wasn't fooling anyone. Story 114. A little industry specific, but as a young cook, I would conspicuously take my knife roll home with me for my days off before asking for a raise. So my chef would get worried I was doing work interviews at other restaurants and consider losing me before answering. Story 115. They start taking home the items they brought to work over the years, not all at once, just 1 or 2 things at a time. Story 116. Before I quit my job formally but had my job offer, I was using PTO like crazy. Every one Monday and Friday was off until I left. I was also slowly cleaning out my office. One day I walked out with like 4 office sweaters. Luckily it was summer, so I could just say I didn't need them. Story 117. I have today and 2 more days in my current job, then start a new one on Monday. It was fairly obvious I was leaving as I stopped wearing my official uniform, being on time, and leaving early for a full month. Also haven't answered the phone in 2 weeks except for specific internal callers. My bosses know I am leaving and haven't said a word about training a replacement or my change in demeanor. I just can't wait to get out. Story 118. When they start showing up on time after being late for years, it's like they suddenly care again, but not really. Story 119. They use a lot of their sick vacation time in a short period of time, but not for actual travel. I know we should use all our time that we earned, but people tend to use their time off during the same time of year. If a person is using several days off in a certain period of time that's outside of their normal time off, then they're probably going on interviews or using their time before they give their 2 weeks notice. Story 120. They start using all their PTO. If the job sucks, then I'd agree with others on here saying that they'll just seem happier and less stressed. But if they're just quietly walking away for other reasons, using up paid time off is a big indicator. Story 121. Asking for help from IT, others in getting their personal computers to match work computer capabilities. Story 122. Comment je peux avoir rapidement des karmas? J'ai l'impression d'être puni à ne pas pouvoir poster. Story 123. Lack of motivation. Keep being forced with to work with the annoying one at work. Looks tired, fed up all the time. If the person starts asking around of what people think of the current work situation, coworkers, etc. Story 124. So after reading the comments, I discovered my natural work habits are indicative of someone on the verge of quitting or tragic end. Well, I certainly hope they are wrong on both counts. Story 125. When the boss yells at them, but they don't seem fazed by it and just continue doing what they're doing. Story 126. People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. In my situation, I slowly started cleaning out my desk workspace, stopped caring completely, did the minimum required of me to not get fired before quitting, spoke less, gave zero input in meetings. Quietly slid my list of new sales leads to the only coworker I liked. I don't actually recommend telling anyone you're quitting until you do, but he was a real one. Story 127. Start showing up later, not as active in meetings, less enthusiasm, or not as stressed and happy knowing they're about to leave for greener pastures. Story 128. When I was looking for another job, I would go to interviews during lunch. I had to rush and would get back from lunch all sweaty LOL. Also, coworkers were wondering why I started not joining them for lunch about 2 times a week roughly, so I had to make excuses for the ones that weren't that close. Looking back, I should have made excuses for all of them. Gotta be careful when you trust some coworkers. They are just coworkers. Story 129. When someone seemingly out of nowhere starts updating their own training materials for the next person to inherit their job. Someone recently quit at my job, and what clued me off beforehand was they suddenly cared a lot about training new hires, then started updating their procedure documents and manuals. Story 130. In the past, I started to clear out my desk and take down decorations. I once worked at a place with high turnover, and the boss asked all new employees to decorate their desks. She wanted to make sure you weren't leaving. I guess she knew the office decoration thing too. Story 131. For women, it's when they wear a skirt or dress to work. Pro tip, wear a skirt at least once a month to work, even when you are not looking for a job, so that when you do start interviewing, a skirt will not seem so suspicious. Story 132. I cleared out all of my stuff one Friday, had the following week up with a doc cert, and quit in the middle of that week. They didn't deserve me at that job. Story 133. They start slowly bringing home their workspace knickknacks. Their desk space gets emptier and emptier. Story 134. Cleaning out their office and slowly taking personal items home. I got called out once for suddenly not having any personal items left. Story 135. Taking meeting notes for a new project I've been added to while checking the status of job applications at the same time. Story 136. Reading through these comments, I'm seeing a lot of things I've done and am currently doing. I love my job, but things have changed that I'm not happy about. So yeah, quietly planning to quit within the next 2 years unless something changes. Story 137. I always ramp up the cross-training so I can cruise the last few days or give as little notice as possible when TJA time comes. It's an easy sell for this looking for growth opportunities. That way, I can also make sure the people I like are less likely to inherit the grunt work. Story 138. As a manager in this boat right now, I've stopped intervening when I see people doing things wrong or procedures not being properly followed unless it's a health or safety issue. I'll help people work through things who ask and give them my all. But I've stopped putting effort into things that have been an uphill battle for the last couple of years. I've given up course correcting when managers' projects aren't going quite the right way, because why would they give a fudge now? I've spent so long trying. What's the darn tooting point when I'm ready to hit the ejector seat? Story 139. You start to notice that any personal items on their desk or in the office cubicle start to be removed a little at a time until all that's left is stuff that can be backed into a backpack in their last day. They also start emailing themselves any important documents they have saved on the server that isn't considered company property, like business contact lists or their latest signed job description. Story 140. The person who is training me, I am her replacement PT assistant. And this week she has given no Fs, just leaves. Story 141. At Doctor's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, 50 or so years ago, the pharmacist used turkey fever for a day off. Story 142. When I was leaving my first proper job in my last annual appraisal, I wrote a somewhat facetiously loaded with buzzwords, etc., not quite my usual engineer, self-deprecating style, and ironically, they appeared to absolutely love it. Story 143. Well, today a coworker I rarely talk to just asked me to be her reference for a job she's applying for. So I guess that's a pretty big sign. Story 144. I was the chief of staff at an org that saw 20 attrition at one point. The main signs include not pushing back on extremely hard KPIs, using up all the vacation days, disengaged in team meetings. Story 145. My coworker just suddenly and unexpectedly requested 12 weeks of FMLA. Pretty sure they're looking for a new job. Story 146. A noticeable difference in their openness to take on longer-term tasks, hesitating to take something on where they might need to hand it off soon. Story 147. This sounds like me. I changed my teams, not the company itself, but still I feel it's relatable. I just stopped worrying about the problems TBH and was genuinely happy that I am leaving the shit show. Story 148. Worked at a shoot job out of college. When employees were unusually happy and super dressed up, they were interviewing at other jobs during their doctor's appointments. One guy had so many doctor appointments that a false rumor began that he had cancer. Story 149. When your manager's boss belittles you on a Zoom meeting for taking your allotted vacation approved months in advance. I answered emails and critical voicemails each day of the vacation. After pointing this out, he didn't back down or apologize. In retrospect, I should have started looking. Story 150. I guess I'm putting in a novel answer. When you get a bad performance review, that may not get you fired, but it gives you a hole to dig out of. None of your current managers will comment negatively on you when you apply elsewhere. In fact, they may happily give you a good reference so they can get you out the door. Maybe they're unappreciative assholes. Maybe you needed to learn a lesson. Either way, start over. Story 151 years ago. I was so stressed out at work, I would cry on the way home. Then I started to cry on the way to work in the morning. Then one day I felt like I was going to start crying while I was at work, so I went to the bathroom to cry in private. But one of my coworkers was already in there crying. That's when I realized I had to get the fuck out of there. Story 152. Only time I saw the writing on the wall, we were bought by a large restaurant group. They had me transfer all their inventory to the new system and then brought someone in to learn from me, so they were having me train my replacement. One at the end because I got my ducks in a row and made a folder of their labor law violations. So when I got the call to the office, I just dropped it down and said I'd like to separate with all my benefits paid out and my salary until I found a new job. Also helps my brother as a labor lawyer at NYC, so having that kind of power on free retainer made a difference. Story 153, being unchallenged after speaking up to that and being highly successful in one's role. Edit. This is why it's so important to stay in a place of newness. Keep interviewing after 1 year on the job. Check your value on the street religiously. Story 154. When they used to have office snacks and drinks, but those are now a thing of the past. The Christmas party goes from an all-out party to drinks in the office to postponed indefinitely. When promotions and raises are halted indefinitely. When people you see as top talent leave one after the other. CEO or any SLT start to micromanage, can't pick a direction to take the company, make terrible decisions and appear to be completely out of their element, but try to overcompensate by going all in on moonshot ideas that are too expensive and dumb. Hiring slows down to point where the company keeps passing on qualified candidates looking for one specific perfect candidate who doesn't exist. They're hoping everyone they hire can save the company. Stock prices drop and it's all the SLT can seem to focus on. Your sales department gets gutted. Your company lays off research, copy, UX, recruiting, project management, and any other position that the CEO thinks he can just do himself. Source: I've worked for a lot of startups that didn't make it, and it's always nice to know when things are going downhill to get ahead of the layoff schedule. Story 155 HR director told me he knows who backs into their parking spaces because they are thinking about going home even before they get here, and he thinks they are problem employees. I told him I back in and was going to explain it's because I get there early when the lot is mostly empty and can take the time to back in without feeling rushed. But all I had time to say was, I back in, and he snarkily interrupted with, yes, I know. That's when I decided I needed a new job. Story 156. When it starts to affect your mental health really bad. In 2 of my previous jobs, I wanted to throw up every single morning because of the anxiety. I'd get home and I'd be full of dread at needing to do it again. In my most recent ex-job, there were several points. I was one bad word away from throwing something at my managers and walking out. And I'm not someone with anger issues. I was just being treated horrendously, and I was balancing right on the very edge most shifts when I was with them. I even considered quitting on the spot and moving back in with my abusive parents. I just wanted out. It was bad. Story 157. For me, it was the day the manager sent around a spreadsheet so we could all list which Saturdays and Sundays we would be available to work over the next 2 months. Everyone could see what everyone else was putting down. And he got 2 keen young guys to start by putting down yes for every single day. No, there wouldn't be any extra pay for those hours, but once the crunch was over, then we could take some extra time off to make up the difference, he promised. This was a lie, of course. I put down no for every single day and began a job hunt immediately. I put in my notice a few weeks later. I said, I don't know. Story 158. When you've barely been sleeping because your wife got flipped upside down by a swing dancer at a wedding and it really bothered you, then your neighbor you've been arguing with over a property line lets a pig with a Richard Nixon mask in through your doggy door. And since you haven't been sleeping, for 50 seconds you thought it was a monster and you're about to get eaten. And your first reaction is that at least you won't have to go to work tomorrow. Story 159. Poor leadership, unruly coworkers, corporate mentality. I've never worked an office job, so I avoid a lot of toxic work environments. But I left my last job at the start of the pandemic, largely due to the fact that my bosses were too enamored with the ass-kissing mentality and did not spend enough time managing their workers. Young me would have put up with a lot of crap from these kinds of workplaces, but older me knows better. Story 160. I think it's time to find something else when my job starts to take a toll on my mental health. I feel like I shouldn't have anxiety about going to work, something I've been doing 5 days a week for the last 4 years. Not able to sleep at night because I know there's some weird problem waiting for me tomorrow. I'm waiting for the stress-induced heart attack or brain aneurysm or something. But this is a stable job, and I just want to save up a little more of an emergency fund before I start looking for something else. Story 161. Akin to panic attacks and feeling sick, crying when you wake up in the morning. One job I had, I would cry pretty much every morning when I woke up and to get ready and when I drove in. It also affected my mental health and amped up my depression. When I got home, all I would do was sleep. I was also considered on call most of the time. I would dread every time my phone would ring because it was probably my work needing me to come in. Luckily, with my SO's support, I was able to leave and got a way better job. It's got stressful moments, but it's definitely not as bad as that one. Story 161. Last one I quit was due to their incompetence and lies. Only hired on with the understanding I had a very important appointment for wife's immigration 9 months in advance and advised them every month I would be gone. Had the time off in system day 1. Time to leave rolls around. Thursday afternoon, they informed me my leave request was denied. Told them it wasn't a request and tomorrow's my last day. Apparently they thought I was joking because they called me 23/6 and left 23 voicemails Monday or on Wednesday the next week while I was in Philippines. Place was a joke all around. Besides this story 162 biggest sign for me, all your managers saying they want to help you advance in your career. But when it's interview time, they are nowhere to be seen and give you some short cookie-cutter answer why they were busy. I am an easygoing person, but when I ask for help and prep and it's canceled 4 times by them, I start to think it's me. I stuck around for 4 years doing everything to prove my worth with the company. Just left though because I wasn't being challenged anymore. So my dumb ass went into a field where every day changes. Mechanic side. Been here going on 2 months, and even though I took a $7 an hour cut, I'm happier and have a cool team to be around. Remind me in a year after the honeymoon phase, and I'll let you know, LOL. Story 163, biggest sign for me. All your managers saying they want to help you advance in your career, but when it's interview time, they are nowhere to be seen and give you some short cookie-cutter answer why they were busy. I am an easygoing person, but when I ask for help and prep and it's canceled 4 times by them, I start to think it's me. I stuck around for 4 years doing everything to prove my worth with the company. Just left though because I wasn't being challenged anymore. So my dumb ass went into a field where every day changes, mechanic side. Been here going on 2 months, and even though I took a $7 an hour cut, I'm happier and have a cool team to be around. Remind me in a year after the honeymoon phase, and I'll let you know, LOL. Story 164. When people are quitting left and right, I work in a woodworking factory making furniture, and we have been struggling since COVID. They froze our 401k matching as well as our pay raises this year. They laid off quite a few people as well, especially on second and third shift. I work third, and in one area in my building, there is literally only one guy working in it because the layoffs cleaned it out. But a lot of people have quit or didn't come back when recalled because of the no pay raises. My boss told me tonight he expects it to get worse because our company is losing $4 million on a weekly basis. I'm only still here because I'm going out of the country in August and need the 3 weeks paid vacation this company offers that others don't. Story 164. Your ideas and goals are laughed at, or worse, questioned and ignored. Thoughts that make you wonder if you truly are worthless, like they treat you. It makes you go, wow, I was in that deep, once you get treated like you're worth something again. Thoughts that it may be better to just drive off the shoulder so you can get hurt and not have to go into work for a while. All happened to me, and I can't believe I put up with that for so long. It still impacts me, and I'm already very easily crushed by people's words. I don't know how to be more confident in me. Story 165. When they promise you something, they'll fix it, change it multiple times, and never follow through, especially when it involves your pay hours. When they take advantage of your extra help. Can you pick up this shift this week? Yes, but I only can this week. I usually have something planned. Yes, of course, thank you. Proceeds to put you on that same shift 3 weeks in a row. Or, it's a big load today, but I'm not worried since you always stay and help often anyway. I can't stay today. Okay, not a problem. Then gets hours cut because of it. When seniority comes before good workers, we had to give the extra hours to the lazy, incompetent worker because they've been here longer than you. But you're a good asset to this company. We just don't have any more hours to give you the full time you originally applied for, obviously said in different words. And I understand if the other person senior to you really is a good worker, but when it's a worker that even management complains about, that really ticks me off. Sorry, this was more than one oops. Story 166. There's a lot, but one that's rarely discussed is opportunities to grow. The best jobs I've ever worked were where my employer was actively invested in my personal growth. I once worked an awesome job where my manager explained that literally everyone good in the industry had come from our company. He often commented it was a shame we grew people so fast we literally couldn't afford to scale fast enough to promote them all to management roles internally, and he thought it was great that many people got poached because of the quality of skill set they'd developed in our business. It was true, literally everyone in our space had started with us, and they kept bringing business back even from competing firms. His department was regarded as the gold standard for how to learn, and I watched people take pay cuts to go work under him. Conversely, I've worked in roles where the manager cut anyone who wanted to grow off at the knees. A team that is growing is a huge asset, not a threat. If your manager won't let you grow and compensate you accordingly, it's time to leave. Story 167 signs of irritability before work, or if someone brings work up, it puts you in a hostile state of mind. Good employees quitting. From a company perspective, if they start laying off, cutting hours, changing benefit packages, or any type of consolidation, you should be very wary and start looking elsewhere. Also, don't trust management or higher-ups if you are concerned and they assure you nothing is happening. A lot of companies will tell you what you want to hear because they can't afford to lose entire workforces at once from people quitting. Take care of yourself and only what's best for you and your family. If you work for a big company, remember no one knows your name above your manager, and if they do, it likely doesn't go past that next level. Story 168, I quit when I realized my mental health was completely fucked to staying. It wasn't even that the people I worked with were bad. It was the fact that I got charged out at $115 an hour and made 40, while doing so much more than just field work. I did estimates, helped people with problems, dealt with customers, good and bad, was never given a proper role. It just defeated my will to keep trying. I dreaded coming to work because I never felt I was being compensated fairly for what I was doing. I quit and am starting my own company now. Just did a little job that paid me $80 plus a free tire change for an hour's work. Taking some workshops and just finished getting the necessary tickets to be able to pull permits. It's go time. Story 169. I left one job because a manager said to me, "Can't you be more like Jim?" Now, Jim used to send a lot of emails. He once sent an email saying he was going to send me an email. He would look busy, but everyone knew he was a lazy-ass hat. 7 team leaders, myself and a female TL, had the best performing shifts, the highest attendance rates, and we were the best. 4 others, Medicore, did the job but didn't care. Then Jim used to play the fool. Everyone thought he was useless and would often, as female employees, if they'd like to join his swingers club with him and his wife. That was a sign to me that the newer managers had no effing idea what was going on. Story 170, when you just dread going to work. Not everyone likes or even mildly enjoys their job, but there is still a place to not dread and hate every second you spend there. Whatever job you have, I can guarantee there is something that pays as well, and the boss isn't a dipshit for fun, and the policies might not be great, but they don't feel actively hostile, and few to no coworkers make you go, ugh, this person. Also, while it is pretty normal to feel tired of after work, you shouldn't feel both mentally and physically drained after, to the point where all you can do after a workday is be tired as fuck and do some chores. Once in a while, sure. But if you look ahead and see your life being nothing but that sucks. Find something just a little lighter on you. Don't be afraid to quit your job if it sucks. It makes the world just a teeny bit better if we all do it. Conditions not good and sustainable? I'm out. The more we all keep saying that, the better minimum conditions for workers will have to be. Story 171, sudden changes with no information or warning. I was with a company for 13 years and was in a role created with my skill set in mind that I helped develop. I ended up being busy enough due to people being added to my groups to support that another person was brought in. We worked together well. A while after our boss switched departments, changes started to get made in shady way. We were asked how we felt about taking scheduled lunches, as we went when it was slow, and always just one at a time so there's always coverage. 30 minutes after we stated we would not like that system, we were given set lunch and break schedules. We were moved from a chat system, which allowed us to help 4 people at once on average, to a phone system without any input. I even said during one of the meetings where we were just told of a change with no input that I felt like they were phasing our job out. I was assured they weren't. The other guy and I talked, and both started looking for new jobs. Our one IT guy even told my supervisor to be careful or they would lose me, and she said something along the lines of, he wouldn't just leave. One of my coworkers last day, I messaged my manager asking if she had a moment to go over something. I put in my 2 weeks notice, which was met with a surprised Pikachu face. About 6 months after I left, they eliminated the position. I only know because a friend of mine took over it and let me know. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more content like this, you might be interested to know that I've created another channel with a similar theme, especially for those of you who enjoy what I do. I'll leave a link in the description, and I hope to see you there. Take care. What's a widely accepted fact that you're 100 sure is completely wrong? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.